One of the most beautiful drums of India is called Khol. It is a two-headed drum, one smaller head, and it's made of clay. In South India, there's another drum called Mrdanga, which sometimes is, also this one is called Mrdanga. And the South Indian drum is made of wood. And Mrd means mud, Anga means limb. So sometimes there's confusion that why is this wooden drum called the drum with limbs of mud. And the answer to that is that both heads on each side have a patch. This patch, sometimes called siahi or gaba, is actually made of clay. So why is it there? If you would remove this patch, the skin by itself has a very high pitched tone. So this is undesirable because this side of the drum should give us a low pitch. In this case, because there's too much layers of clay and too much humidity in the air because there's a rainy season just started, then the pitch of the drum has been lowered too much and it creates a distorted sound, almost like a deflated basketball. So this is undesirable and one must learn how to adjust the pitch. So what we'll do is remove this layer by putting water first and letting it absorb and removing very carefully the clay. And then we'll proceed to apply a new patch. If the problem also happens if the weather is too hot because there's no moisture in the air, and then when you play on this side, the pitch is very, very high. So one can add a little water on the patch itself or on the sides to lower the pitch. And if it's a continuous problem, well, just better learn how to apply and add more layers so that you don't have to do that every single time. You have a nice sounding drum most of the time. These are adjustments that every drum player, every serious drum player at least should know because, well, there are many situations where we're changing weather, climate, and we need to be able to play very beautiful music for the pleasure of Krishna. So let's begin. The first step will be to add water to the current clay patch. And we have to let it sit and moisten it for, I don't know, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, until it absorbs fully. This is necessary because otherwise we damage the skin. The clay will soften, and then with a little soft spatula or some razor blade, very softly, start to remove the clay. You'll notice that the skin on the bottom starts to bend and form little irregular shapes. That's all right. That happens when the skin is wet. Now 10-15 minutes have passed and automatically some parts of the clay are chipping off. It's important to be very careful at this point because we don't want to damage the skin. So with a spatula or some knife or something not very sharp, very carefully start to scrape off the clay. And this will take you some time, but it's better to be slow and careful because otherwise you can break the skin. And to replace the skin would be a much bigger endeavor. If it is not removable, the first attempt, it's better to dry it with a towel and then put some more water, let it sit for another 10 or 15 minutes. And then try again. It will soften each time because you're taking off layers of clay. Another 10 minutes have passed now, and we're going to remove more clay. Better not damage the skin, so another 10 minutes with water and that should do the trick. And we'll remove the last bit of clay. So you'll notice how much easier it is. It all comes out smoothly. And that's it for the first step. Now we'll let it dry, and you'll notice the pitch is very high. It has been sitting now for a day. I want to let the skin dry so that you could see the effect of having no clay on this side of the head. So it's a very high pitch, which is not useful for this side of the drum, and that's why we need the clay patch. If we add just a little water, we notice that immediately the pitch goes down. The problem with that is that it won't remain low for a long time, so you would have to put water all the time, and it would be a big problem. So we're going to proceed to apply a layer of rice, cooked rice, and we're gonna make it into a paste and apply it as our glue. It will be our gluing agent. I have this rock that I found near a river, so you just look anywhere around you where there's lots of rocks. You need something to grind, something that has a smooth edge, and we're gonna need just simple cooked rice. It has been soaking for 2 hours so that it's nice and soft. So we'll take some rice, like 2 handfuls like this, and we're going to mash it up to make our glue. Okay, so now we have our rice paste. Now that we have our paste, we're going to apply it. And first, this head has to be really wet, really moist, so that the glue will stick very nicely. So it's important to put a lot of water. Doesn't matter if you see the skin bending, it's all right. We don't want to leave big chunks of rice, so we're going to grind it as we apply it to the drum in a circular fashion to the size of the patch that we're going to do. One has to press firm so that the rice breaks up. And then with the spatula, we have to clean it up on the sides. can put a little water on your finger so to spread it evenly. And it should start looking like a layer of glue. And this will stick to our clay as we put it later on. You should see no big pieces of rice, especially no hard pieces of rice. And if there's anything left, you have to mash it a little more with your stone. And this will complete our first stage. Then we will let this dry under the sun for 30 minutes. Or if you don't have sun, then you have to wait until it dries, fully dried. And then we'll proceed to apply the clay. Now the first layer of glue is set. A day has passed and now it's fully dry. It shows little cracks everywhere, and that's a good sign. We will put our clay on top of this, and this will keep the clay together with the drum. Now we're going to prepare our clay mixture. In this case, I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of clay. Most of the clay, when you buy it or when you make it on your own from the backyard, is going to be too coarse. So you need to grind it for about, 10 minutes more or less, until you achieve a very soft texture. Similar to when you buy some spices on the store, like turmeric powder, that is very soft. Not grainy at all, very, very soft. And you need to basically grind it as much as needed until you achieve that texture. If it's not fine enough, what's going to happen is that you'll apply your clay and it will start cracking with big cracks, and it will fall off. So you need, this is very important, you need a very fine clay powder. Once you have your clay powder, then we will add 1 tablespoon of the rice. So the proportion is 2 to 1. And then we'll blend them together. It is very important to crush it very finely so that there's no grains of rice. We will still crush it while applying, but the best is to remove them all beforehand. Okay, we've got it. So let's go to the next step. So we have our clay and rice ready to be applied, and we will put them 1 layer at a time. So we'll take a little bit, put it in the center, and with the help of some water and our grinding stone, we'll distribute it evenly, applying little pressure. It is very important to not leave any pieces of rice at this point. It has to be just clay and rice totally fine. So that is the first layer, and we will repeat this process several times according to the amount of layers that we need to apply. In a very humid weather, the drum will have a very low pitch, so you want to apply few layers. And if your weather is very dry, desert-like, then you have to apply more layers. Now that the first layer is applied, we let it dry for about 5 minutes. And if there's any extra clay on the sides, we can remove it with our spatula. Then we proceed to apply another layer. Take another chunk of the clay and glue, rice, and repeat the procedure. At the last layer, what you can do is with your fingers, with some water, even it out. This will make the clay smooth. And then simply remove any extra clay from the sides. And we'll have to let it dry until it's fully dry, and we'll continue with the next step. Now our drum is nice and dry, and we can see that there are some very small cracks in the clay, and that is okay and normal. If the clay is not fine enough, then you will see big cracks and actually chunks of clay will fall off. And this is a very common problem because it's hard sometimes to get the powder to be to a very fine texture just with a hand grinder. So sometimes you can use this if you have available, which is just a spice grinder. You put your 2 tablespoons in the grinder and run it for 5 minutes. And then you have a very fine powder from the clay. And this should be the result. Now, if you put your hand over it, you'll notice that it's still a little bit rough. So what you need to do to finish is use a sandpaper and just pretty much level it out until it's nice and smooth. This is just a very soft sanding. And then, well, you notice now the pitch of the drum is much more usable. And if it gets a little bit hot during the day, I can just put a little water. And if it gets too cold, expose it a little bit to the sun. But the drum should sound good most of the time. And that is a good amount of clay to apply. You'll have to experiment with how many layers you apply, and I think if you try once or twice you might fail, but eventually you'll get it right and you'll see how much more benefit. Another tip is that when you're applying the paste, if it goes too much out of the ring, you can use a spatula to go around like this, in this motion, to remove the extra clay. And that will maintain your circle nice and straight. If there's any comments or questions, please post them below or visit our website, thevedicway.org. Thank you. Hare Krishna.